Professor Anicia Peters is our first candidate, and the topic is repositioning a University of Science and Technology for relevance, sustainability, and the impact in a constrained economic environment. Reimagine the role of NUST in Namibia, including the key strategic choices and trade-offs to achieve this. Professor, you have the floor.
I'm not sure. Oh, I guess that works already. Mr. Chair, as well as the selection panel, thank you so much once again for inviting me to this interview. And then I feel like it's homecoming, so I'm looking at all of the faces of all of you, and good morning. I hope that we will have an opportunity to shake some hands and hugs and so on. So I can't see the slides.
You may want to come and start here, probably.
Yes. Okay, is it okay? Thank you. Okay, so I'm Anicia Peters, and I think that many of you know me. For those who don't know me, just a quick recap of who I am. I'm currently the CEO of the NCRST, that is the National Commission on Research, Science and Technology. I'm also affiliated to the University of West London, and then I have I'm also the incoming president for the Science Granting Councils of Sub-Saharan Africa, as well as the co-lead, actually since end of 2024, of the Africa Innovation Agencies Network. And then I did my PhD in human computer interaction, and then I'm a NUST alum. Yay. Nobody says yay. I did my undergrad degrees at the Old Polytechnic of Namibia, and then of course I did executive education at Stanford University, and I'm a certified SAP Solutions Architect. According to the Ad Scientific Index, I'm the second highest ranked female researcher in the country. Total, it shows 31, but usually we have to do a lot of cleaning because a lot of people have left NUST and UNAM without changing affiliation, so I'm number 26. And then you can see my my research credentials, but as you are all academics, I'm sure that you have Googled it already, right? Because the first thing you do if you see somebody, then you get onto the computer and you type in Google Scholar or Scopus, but just for reference sake, it's on there. And then I have supervised masters, honors, and of course PhD students. My records are at NUST to examine all of the students as well as the graduations. I'm still busy with PhD supervision at University of Northwest London. Then I have some accolades. And so, what have I done? What have I achieved? I want to start with my past appointments. So I was the Pro Vice-Chancellor for Research, Innovation and Development at the University of Namibia. And then I was also the Executive Dean for the Faculty of Computing and Informatics at NUST. My journey with NUST was in total 12 years. I started with NUST in 2000 and, was it 9? February, I remember the day. And then I've been at universities in the US, in Silicon Valley, and I've also held a number of visiting professorships. For instance, I was teaching in Germany in Furtwangen University, Walter Sisulu. I was also at Aalto, and then at Leeds University. And at Swansea, I have an active sort of affiliation with their research group, the EVE AI group. Okay, so I've written the national strategies for e-health in Namibia, also for e-government procurement, and then I have established a few institutions in Namibia. At NUST, you will recall the Namibia-India Center of Excellence, that was in 2016. Then also the Oracle Academy in the Faculty of Computing. Then we had a number of COVID digital health applications, and we rolled out the 2020 curricula. In that time, the research outputs grew, as well as resource mobilization, third stream income. So at UNAM, I did the same. I worked with Dr. Nepolo in getting the COVID testing lab up and running, as well as certified. And during COVID, we had also had to make some sort of interventions in the medical field, like for instance, the 3D medical devices, oxygen delivery devices. We build a lot of apps. I developed some of the e-health systems together with WHO while I was at UNAM. So, and then of course also set up the Green Hydrogen Research Center. I think one of the things at UNAM that I did immediately when I got there was a very big problem in terms of students graduating. And that was the research ethics was a centralized system. Now try across 2,600 staff members, and then you have, for instance, echoing. And then you have 30,000 students, and just think what a nightmare it was if you had a centralized research ethics system. So I digitalized it, and I devolved it to every single campus and every single school, because ethics is also very discipline specific. You can't do health ethics and apply it to social science. So there's a very big difference. Okay, then at NCRST, I had increased the infrastructure. We currently have 3 premises. When I started, it was just 1. We've added a 4th one now with the UN Plaza. And then I also had a number of policy instruments that we had completed within the 3 years now, from 2023 until now. And then, of course, I had appointed and reappointed the councils, because except for Biosafety Council, Space Science Council, and ICARES Council were sort of, I had to revive them. And then I brought in a new ISBP, and NCRST has a 100% governance compliance rate, which means that we have timely audited financial statements, we have investment policies, we have performance agreements signed and evaluated, etc. Everything that's in the matrix in the PEGA. Okay, so what's the vision? You know, sometimes it's difficult to speak about a vision when you haven't really touched base on what works, what doesn't work, and what do people want, what is on the top of their minds. But I went through the figures, and I was moaning a bit because I said I could actually speak from just the figures, the entire presentation, but it looked too messy because it was just jotting down all of the figures that I got from documents. But what does it take for NUST to reposition itself as premier university that is locally and globally relevant, recognizes quality-driven, transformative, fit for purpose, and a sustainable solutions engine at the heart of Namibia's development agenda? For me, those are 5 key things. Student success, research, and research impact must be transformative and transdisciplinary research. Innovation, digital fluency, and every single student who leaves NUST should also have that, should also be digitally fluent, as well as have an entrepreneurial mindset. And then finally, sustainable excellence. Sustainability in terms of the research realm is defined at least 3 layers. In the Global Research Council, we define it at 3 layers. I'm not going to speak about those 3 layers. I'm going to speak about how do you sustain excellence, and then sustainability follows with it. So, I looked at 5 commitments. The first one is future-ready graduates. Research that Namibia can feel. Research that's not only on papers, published at some venue that we will never go to, or journals that we will never read. NUST ideas to impact. University-wide innovation and commercialization pipeline. And then number 4, a human-centered digital NUST, because I am in human-computer interaction and human centricity, whether it be in AI, or whether it be in systems, or whether it be in communities. That's my first name. Sustainable excellence, I spoke about that one already. We will look at how do you achieve financial efficiency and sustainability to be able to sustain your excellence. So the first one is future-ready graduates. And here I spend a lot of time looking at NUST's figures. And they're good and there's bad. For me, 23,933 students. What do you have? You have a problem in terms of capacity. Think that your capacity, your facilities, equipment did not grow with the growth of the students. You have a 49-to-1 ratio, student-teacher ratio. That is a massive problem. Internationally, it's 18-to-1. Minimum standard says 30-to-1, but that's usually social sciences. So there's a big problem. And then, of course, your Faculty of Commerce, Human Sciences and Education has a 57% enrollment of student population. That faculty needs to be split. And one has to think about how does it split preferably. Then, of course, you need to bring in hybrid and online delivery. Number 2, research that Namibia can feel. The person in the remote village, I'm usually given a village that they say, how do they feel it? That's what we need to do. It can't just be in terms of student dissertations and journal articles. We need to look at STISA 2034, it's brand new. It was launched in February, NDP 6, and communities need to be able to feel that this is NUST. This is NUST graduates. This is what NUST is doing. NUST is answering our questions and our problems on the ground. Of course, there's a number of things that goes through it. NUST is the university that needs to be at the front end of the AI revolution. And partnerships. We have partnerships only with Europe and with South Africa. The whole world is open. The whole of Africa is open for more partnerships. And industry is the biggest partner that we need to onboard. Make innovation a system and not an event. Every single faculty, whether you are commerce, whether you're engineering, your students should graduate knowing how to turn ideas into prototypes and then into enterprises and make community impact. Now, of course, we have a number of enabling factors that we need to look at. Funding is one, IP is one, partnerships is another one, but we need to look at how do we drive that across the value chain. Human-centered digital NUST. We need to look at digital goes to our own students, to our lecturers, to our communities, to ourselves, to what does it mean for Namibia, to our governments. I had to do an online course at Stanford University. And the one thing that I learned, it was tough. But number two, I felt present because of all of the embeddings of AI and digital technologies that they were giving me. NUST needs to go that direction. That's the massification of higher education. You need to roll out, now it will be we, hopefully, we will be rolling out such digital platforms. Sustained excellence. We need to have discipline in terms of transparent budgeting, procurement efficiency, risk management systems. We need diversification of grants and donors, executive education, industry-funded research. In Namibia, there's a lot of money. This is what I'm always told. There's a lot of money, but we need to go offer them the solutions and then value create. Alumni giving, consulting, and IP. My final slide is governance. Governance is extremely important. We need to have, well, first of all, a co-created ISBP that we are all holding ourselves accountable to. Then ethical leadership and transparent decision-making, that starts with me. Strong council accountability and clean governance. Academic freedom and academic quality insurance. It's 2 more points, then I'm done. Risk anticipation, compliance and institutional resilience. Clear performance scorecards. And one thing about NUST in the QS rankings, the academic reputation is at an all-time low. And NUST is the quality, the hallmark of excellent education. So we need to change that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Peters. Now we have 30 minutes of questions. I would like... Thank you, Professor Peters. We have 30 minutes of questions. I would like that we really stick to questions, no statements. Ask the candidate on the subject matter. I don't know who is helping me with regard to the men and women who are online. Those questions. Are you the one helping? Okay. So the floor is open. Who wants to go and ask the professor? Yes, Meme? Do we have mic?
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Prof, for a wonderful presentation. I have a question which is basically talking to your last slide when I saw that integrity. I have been at NUST for many years now. So at NUST, it is common that one observes complex internal dynamics and informal network influence where individuals seek to position themselves, shaping narratives about other colleagues and institutional dynamics. what deliberate strategies will you implement to ensure that your leadership remains impartial, evidence-based, and grounded in institutional governance frameworks, particularly in your initial period as a Vice-Chancellor?
I would like to ask that we maybe allow 3 or 5 people at a time so that she, and to the extent possible, please stand up so that the camera can catch you. I saw there and then Tatena Shandi.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you, Professor Peters, for that enlightful presentation. Mine is quite straightforward based on what you presented. You've indicated that we've got about 57% students enrolled in the Faculty of Commerce, Human Sciences and Education. And you had an interesting statement there. As a University of Science and Technology, 50% of our enrollment is in the commerce faculty. What would your strategy be around addressing that, first of all, and how do we embed technology and the innovation that you were speaking about, the entrepreneurship culture, into that? Thank you.
Thank you, Prof, and thank you for the presentation. My question really straightforward to say, at what point can the university achieve optimality? And then at that point, then you advise policymakers to say, we have achieved our growth, we can no longer accommodate more numbers because we need to be sustainable and efficient. At what point? Because I see we want to accommodate and we are chasing growth, and that growth compromises quality. Thank you.
We have line. If not, 2 from here. I see Memede and then Tate.
Thank you, Prof, for the presentation. Mine is on research. I love the way you put it, that we need our research published in places and rooms we will sit or read from. Currently, Namibia has few journals that are accredited and places that you can really say you can put your quality research out there for. Remember the issue of ranking and all that. What strategies will you put in place as a university leader so that industry, universities, and ministry can ensure that Namibia has such a room?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Professor, for your presentation. My question is very straight. Your vision definitely centers around academic work. At the university, it's very, very normal that academics need to be motivated. So my question to you is that what is it you're going to do that would make the academics engage in a more self-motivating way of working, because we can't achieve that vision simply by putting out rules. Academics have to take up, the role internally within their space to lead on, and that needs self-motivation. Thank you.
In terms of the clicks, it will be everywhere. Everywhere that we go, we will always find, because humans have a natural gravitation towards, talking to each other, etc. But oftentimes, if what they are discussing is unheard, it's not listened to, it's not paid attention to, it does tend to fester. And so therefore, you asked, what will I do in the first 100 days? For me, I will listen. I've learned my lesson, moving from different places to another place, dive in and think that you've got the answers and we will do this and we will do that. No, it actually doesn't work like that. The first 100 days, I will mostly be listening, seeing what is happening, feeling out where do people want to go. When I started at NCRST, I took 10 minutes with each staff member. Now, sometimes it was not enough, but 10 minutes with each staff member. And just hear, it's a check-in. I call it a regular check-in. It's just asking them, what makes you tick? What makes you worried at night? When I wake you up in the middle of the night, what will you tell me? What should NUST be known for? How do we position NUST? And through that, I actually pick up, from an innocent sort of check-in, I pick up a lot of the pains and the groans and the moans that is oftentimes at a very, at the operational level, and perhaps, your DVCs might not even pick it up. But I think that when grievances or unhappiness remains unresolved, it festers, and then it creates your little spaces where people try to air it out. So that's one thing that I will do. Now I have to see what the second question was. So the second question was in terms of human sciences. It's commerce, human sciences, and education. So the 57% enrollment is a little bit, I think, I struggled because when I looked at the total STEM enrollment, it was actually higher than the non-STEM. I think it was 67-33 was the split. And then I was wondering, but, what does it make up? What does the STEM programs make up of? So when I looked at the Faculty of Commerce, I noticed that they have entrepreneurship and innovation in there. I know that the university wanted to set up a separate TVET faculty at one stage. Unfortunately, I don't know how far that is. But the entrepreneurship and innovation is one interesting one that I would possibly move out of that faculty and perhaps have a look, where would it be best placed? But that is a conversation that you have a look at. You don't decide it immediately. Then there was another one. I think that the logistics and supply chain is also in there. And that one I know from industry, from where I'm sitting, I know that's a very important program. And then I would look at really, what is contained within that faculty that might possibly be separated from it. Because I can also imagine the strain, because it would be easy for me to sit here and say, in terms of massification, in terms of what to do, with such an enrollment. Now, in the social sciences, you can oftentimes, more than what you have, sort of the hands-on technical science disciplines like engineering, computing, sometimes also hospitality, you have an opportunity to sort of deliver your programs in a digital, in an online mode, in a blended mode. I mean, the universities, the Ivy League universities around the world are offering their programs exactly in that format. In South Africa, we also see a number of online offerings. And there isn't like negativity towards, oh, I didn't think that I learned, but we do need to reskill ourselves in terms of online and hybrid delivery. That's what I think that we need to do. And for that, of course, you still need to have, additional capacity in terms of digital infrastructure, in terms of the talent at the university. But I think that it is very much possible. So it's not to say, stop immediately. We are not going to take in any more, students. But it is looking at where is it going, because the university does have to grow. But so you have to get more staff in as well. I think the next question had to do precisely with, so how do you deal with, at what point, Edie, at what point do you achieve saturated growth, where you're saying the university can't anymore? And I think that it is when you are looking at, in terms of doing the registrar will probably know this very well, when you do your projections as to how many students you can take in, then you're looking at what is my capacity currently that I'm having in terms of physical and digital infrastructure, equipment, you know, your staffing. As I said, the ratios is very important because on QS, I think it's very lowly ranked, and it's 10% is the student-faculty ratio. You're looking at, you know, what can I possibly deliver? And then you calculate, where can I, you know, admit students into which groups, etc. Then you also, there's another factor that you probably also look at, and that is, you know, what type of students, like the student profile that you are admitting, you know, what type of caliber. Now, some people say, oh, we shouldn't talk about, you know, the fact that we want to have more points when they come in. What do we do in terms of your bridging programs when you're admitting from NSSO versus your AS, and what is the amount of AS students who are available? In other words, what's your feeder system? And what can you possibly get into that? I think those are factors that you take into consideration. Within industry, there's another factor that will come in. We see it with the teachers, where you get quotas, for instance, because you're oversupplying. So you have to stop and then spread that as well. But once you've reached that saturation point and you say, they're knocking on our door, but we can't admit anymore, then this is a conversation that I hope that is held with Coach Honorable Deputy Minister there, to say the university can't anymore. It's bursting out of its seams. So you have to help us, and NPC, of course. You have to help us in terms of, this is our expansion plan, this is our transformation plan. Perhaps we have already satellite campuses where we have shifted students to, but now you've got hostel problems, right? Because if you're taking them outside of their area, you need to provide for them the accommodation. So I think it's a complex sort of question, that one. But we should start early speaking. We should do like a lot of institutional research so that we do a lot of sort of predictive analysis and speak to the government and donors at an early stage, as opposed to waiting until we can't anymore, and then we want them to sort of act on our self-created emergency. In terms of research and the journals and the outlets, UNAM has a number of journals. I've forgotten now how many. NUST also has journals. NUST, I remember the NAVA journal. NCRST also has a journal. So when I was at UNAM, we tried to give elevate the local journals also to the level where we recognize it when we do, for instance, the promotions, professorship. How do you recognize those journals? Because most of the time people will just look at what's your Scopus output, right? And then looking at the journals in terms of getting them to be internationally recognized. In other words, when I go on Scopus, I'll see the Namibian journals there. Now, at UNAM, there was already, I think, 2 journals. I'm speaking under correction, all the UNAM people out there. Forgive me if my memory fails me. But there are already 2 journals that underwent that process. Currently at NCRST, we are busy with the NCRST journal. We had the visiting experts here who are going to help us achieve that. And then, of course, but they are also looking at NUST and at UNAM to see, you know, how we can get those journals also internationally ranked. It is unfortunately also a problem that when we congregate in Namibia, we tend to congregate around conferences as well. And there is conference publishing models that you can partner it, for instance, with a journal that can take it up. But I think it's important to sort of create those venues for publishing while being locally relevant, but then also internationally recognized, so that we don't disadvantage colleagues when it comes up for promotion questions. Oh yeah, it was the open science also platforms that I was talking about, and I think open science and open access is a very big topic that I know that in our spaces we are also constantly taking it up. and negotiating, for instance, for Namibia has been declassified now from upper middle income because our open access article processing fees was extremely high, because they are now prorating it according to your status. And now that we are sort of, in a lower rank, we might see that we have some more waivers coming Namibia's way. Otherwise, it becomes very expensive. Now, the university will have to assist researchers in terms of this open access article processing fees. That's because it's now not just certain journals, it's all of them coming. Even our conference models are changing into that. Then we have the last question that I have to answer, is the academics need to feel self-motivated. So for me, I think I had a slide where it is people. It's people at the heart of the university. And for me, it is oftentimes if the professors, if the lecturers, if the admin staff, if they are not happy, and why would they not be happy? Because perhaps they don't have access to the resources that they need to be able to deliver their teaching. Because I believe that mostly academics they're in the space because they want to, because they care. I don't think that they're there because it doesn't make money. So it's not a money issue, right? So it's an intrinsic type of motivation. And when we take care of our academics, providing their needs, what they have, and it's not, and that goes to workload models as well, then what happens is the students are happy, because then those professors and lecturers actually take care of the students more. So this is why I feel it's such an intertwined circle that we're having. Academics also now in the AI era need to constantly upgrade and upskill themselves, and we need to provide for the capacity building. One final point on workload. It is imperative that we have postdocs, that we have full-time master's and PhD students, because those ones are the ones that are taking the teaching load off so that we have more time to do research. I thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I don't know what I'm doing on time. Okay, 15 minutes left. Part of the giving numbers to this is that panel members should also ask during this public presentation. They have to grade the candidate. So if you allow me, I want to ask whether there's any panel member who want to ask the two professors. Let me start with the lady first. Professor Prince.
Thank you. Prof. Peters, it's really a remarkable vision that you presented and many things there, but you have a finite budget for NUST, and you're in a very constrained economic environment as well. So how would you prioritize your strategic activities as you reimagine what NUST will look like? Why would you choose those, and what do you put on the back burner?
Somewhat I'm covered, but I'm just going to ask the question. But it was more focused, especially with regard to research, taking into account that it could play two roles. One is the issue you raised about ideas to impact, but also sustainable excellence. So that's why I want to ask this question. You indicated that you want to drive research that Namibia can feel. Just put that in, Namibia can feel. I haven't seen how you plan to achieve that. And the question is, how do you plan to achieve that, but more so within the context also of the funding model that would support the idea? Thanks.
Thank you. On this side, any question from the panel members? Nothing? On this side, no question from panel members? Thank you. Yes, then I go for
There are questions online.
Who read the online one?
I will. Okay, so we received a lot of questions online. There were some recurring themes. So the one was on what measures will you put in place to tackle internal corruption at NUST? So there were quite a few questions addressing that matter.
Two more.
Okay. Then the second theme was, it said, thank you for your presentation. What strategies will you use to address graduate unemployment? So there were quite a few questions on that. And then the last question, that was, the presentation mentioned a lot about technology and digitalization. How would you go about securing resources and that have been and are still largely insufficient to turn your vision into reality?
I think, yes. Honorable Minister and the two ladies, and then we close it off.
Thank you. Prof. Peters, very simple question. If we are to reconvene in 5 years, what hard evidence would prove that your tenure transformed NUST? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Please, short question, straight.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Professor Peters.
Yeah, so that we can...
For your presentation. The Journal of Applied Linguistics is now internationally accredited, just for your information. Yes, the entrepreneurship question, I think it's quite critical. We have taken the entrepreneurship curriculum and we are busy co-creating to be delivered across the faculties. So all faculties will take that co-created entrepreneurship curriculum. Now, my question is, in terms of the national priorities when it comes to innovation, what really is your strategy in making those entrepreneurship prototypes or ideas into impact nationally? Thank you.
Good afternoon, Prof. I am a student. I'm here in my capacity as the SRC Vice President, so my question is rather student-focused. My question is just, how do you think your leadership will shape the way you would listen to students, especially when their views challenge the policies, the university policies, that might be considered outdated or that have not changed for years?
Professor, this is the last round. And I want to say we don't have much time. I don't want to stop you in the middle.
So the question was on which one are the strategic priorities in terms of research and commercialization. Now, within the country, we have the NDP6 that is already showing our research priorities. There is also the National Program on Research, Science, Technology and Innovation that is supporting the NDP6 and is actually what the universities also have to follow. Then we have now the STISA that has only 5 priority areas. And with the STISA, there is research funding that is now being rolled out across the continent, right? So if we align our priorities, and those priorities are very easy. It's food, it's energy, it's health, it's climate change, and digitalization, right? Water sits within an environment, so it's not separate. If we align those priorities, then you suddenly see that pots of money open up. Europe, I just came back from the European Science Europe and the European Union, the Parliament, as well as the Commission, where they are actually shaping the next 10 years. It's called the P10. in terms of research funding that is coming out. We're positioning now Africa in such a way that we can access more of the funding from the EU, but they need to co-create with us. And I think that in terms of research, we need to align our priorities to where we are going. In terms of commercialization, it's the same thing, right? Because that research agenda includes innovation as well. Then you suddenly see that there are so many streams of external funding opening up. External funding always has the co-financing component, and this is what we at NUST will have to make sure that we are ensuring that we have it. I'm looking at Dr. Matrus, at you. You will have to do that. And then in terms of commercialization, it is extremely important, even for research, to bring the industry partners on board. NUST is a University of Science and Technology. It's applied research. We need to be able to roll it out. We need to be able to answer the industry questions, but industry needs to partner. And that close relationship is what will actually drive NUST in terms of its commercialization drive. Sustainable excellence. So research that Namibia can feel. I oftentimes say it is locally relevant and impactful research, but it has a global impact. Because if we solve problems here and we feel that research, then it also means that it makes its way into our publications. And that is then shaping your global agenda, feeding into this. I'm trying to be very fast. And again, the research, if you solve problems, and I have experience on that, if you start solving problems in Namibia, and oftentimes I say, it just takes some few demonstration cases, you will see how fast people will come because you are building credibility, that your outputs in terms of research, in terms of commercialization, even your student output, right, quality education, you will see how fast they come and they say, I want to partner with you. Hence, I was talking about partnerships that need to also reach across the nation, right, not only across the floor to the other university, but it needs to also reach to other African countries, because I believe that there is so much that we can do. So strategic priorities is absolutely to align it to where is the most needed priorities at the moment in Namibia. Measures to tackle internal corruption at NUST. For me, it's transparency. And I will take that question to answer the students' question on that in terms of the policies that are outdated. Because yes, it is true that policy instruments tend to lag because they should be only 3 years is policy valid, and then you need to renew it. But oftentimes I find that in universities, we don't co-create policies, especially where it affects students, with the students. And we need to take that inclusive approach to bring the students to the table and say, okay, where do we have, I have some experience at UNAM with that, where do we have problems here? How is it affecting the student who is actually having to carry the brunt of the policy that we have implemented? So I think that it's a very inclusive process that we need to go through. But transparency and ethics and integrity starts with yourself. And for me, it starts with me, right? I live it out every day, every single day in my work. I look at, doesn't matter how much somebody is complaining about, no, but can't you fast track this? No, and I do have a very fast turnaround time in terms of approvals and procurement and so on. But I do tend to say, no, we have to follow the right path. Sometimes the path might be a little bit longer than what you want, but we have to follow that. And yeah, I think it starts with ourselves. It starts with transparency. To the students, we also need to be accountable. And I would start actually with getting the annual reports and financial statements audited. Graduate unemployment. This is again when we co-create with industry and international instruments, because that guides us as well. to see where we are going, and we definitely need to do foresighting as to where we are going and what graduates need to come out. And graduates should not only want to have a job, but graduates should also be job creators. Not all of them, but we need to have those entrepreneurship courses. I will take the one on hard evidence, which was from the honorable coach over there. Hard evidence. If you don't see a NUST in 5 years that has graduates where industry and international enterprises are coming to vie for and fighting to get, and we haven't moved on beyond the 2/3, at the moment it's 2/3 employability, we haven't moved beyond the 2/3 employed graduates from NUST, and if you see still research that hasn't taken off in terms of touching the lives being felt in Namibia, in Namibian communities, at government. If you don't see policies that goes from NUST to government, if you don't see technologies and solutions being created in the governments, in the enterprises, and you do not see that industry relationship that NUST has, then you can fire me after 5 years.
Thank you very much. That was the first presenter, Professor Peters. We thank you very much. Thank everybody. What will happen now is we will have a 15 minutes break while we are setting up for the second presenter. Professor, well done. Thank you very much. Yeah. So 15 minutes break, and then we come back and yeah.
Was sie im Grunde zerstören an
They're destroying lives that people spent together.
Des Lebens, was man zusammen verbracht hat.
Meanwhile, the scammers are still being kept on the phone by Hubert Gärtner. But they're not satisfied with what he's offered them.
I'm a bit worried. If I went to the bank, I'd have to withdraw another 20,000. That would be 28,000.
28,000. It's over. Our man suggested going to the bank for more money, but they said no. The case is cold. He was too keen. That's what happens. When victims really wanted to work, the scammers know something's up.
Tracking down phone scammers is incredibly difficult. They make the calls from abroad.
I'm convinced they do this because they know it makes things significantly harder for the police and the legal system.
Can we please take our seat? Let's take our seat. Great. I think we should start the next session. Please come in, all of you, come in. It is the same topic, the same format, and the same timelines. 15 presentation and 30 minutes of questions. I don't think I need to repeat and really reread what I did at the beginning. I think it's clear. I just would like to invite that the second presenter should come in, who is Professor Gideon. Can Professor Gideon please come in? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Professor Gideon. Professor Gideon, welcome. I'm sure you know about the topic on which you should present. Tell this audience that are here, but more importantly, the whole of Namibia. You have 15 minutes for presentation and 30 minutes to answer questions. If you have slides, you have a roving mic, you can take it. You are welcome. The floor is yours.
I can be here.
Okay.
Or
the choice is yours. Oh, yeah.
but maybe let me use the phone.
Okay.
Okay, good. No. Distinguished Chairperson and honorable members of council, I stand here with a conviction, a deep conviction, that Namibia will not actually be built by circumstances, but rather it will be built by institutions that will generate skills, knowledge, and scalable solutions. So, distinguished Chairperson and honorable members of the of council, my name is Professor Gideon, a Pro Vice-Chancellor responsible for academic affairs at the University of Namibia. I'm here to present on repositioning a University of Science and Technology for relevance, sustainability, impact in constrained economic environment, reimagine the role of NUST in Namibia, including the key strategic choices and trade-off required to achieve this. So before I dwell on the presentation itself, I would like actually to touch on a few credentials and qualifications for Professor Gideon. My ethos stayed deeply on the following: academic excellence, national building, progressive leadership. I stand as a leader, a catalyst of innovation, inclusion, and impact. My vision is basically for NUST to transit NUST from a knowledge provider to a solution provider. Now with this, who is the catalyst? I have a PhD in mathematics, a BSc in mathematics, MSc in mathematics, BSc honors in applied mathematics, BSc mathematics physics, MBA, and then 2 certificates, one in executive and project management, and I'm pursuing a PhD in business management and administration. I have 25 years in academia experience, and I have 17 years of academic leadership, 11 years of executive leadership. I'm currently managing 12 campuses with 30,000 students and over 3,500 staff reporting. I have been in council for about 14 years, and I have been in Senate for about 17 years, and I have served in 6 external boards. So I have acted as a Vice-Chancellor in numerous occasions. So Professor Gideon has actually forged strategic partnerships that are so impactful with global university in Africa, Europe, Asia, and America. Now, look at this credential, the qualifications and the contributions. Position me better to be really the candidate for these institutions. So my presentations is actually outlined as follows. So who is NUST? Let's dwell there. NUST is a public institution, and its mandate really focuses on a technological university that addresses applied research, innovations that drive social, economic, and sustainable development. This really calls for clarity from the society. We are asking a question and say, how do we reposition NUST onto a transformative trajectory that delivers measurable impacts across industry, government, and the society? So we need to focus on the challenges. Namibia today focuses on serious youth unemployment at 40%, according to the Namibia Labor Force Survey of 2023. Slow innovation, AI and technology adoption, weak public-private partnership, inadequate research output or culture, raising competition and outdated infrastructure, involving student expectations. Now that we know the challenges, the core question is, how do we redesign NUST academic architecture for student-centric and future-ready ecosystems? So we need to provide solutions. But at the core of my vision for a modern university lies the students as a co-creator. So now, but before we get to the students, so how can we define an academic structure that defines a student that we want? First, we need to think of a transition of these students from a graduate to a creator. We need to shape this student so that this student is employable and really well-rounded. Job seeker, but also job creator. Global aware, but also locally relevant. Now, if this is the case, we need to ask, are we really training students for exam or for life? Because students need clarity when they get into the university. So we need to make sure that our education allows students to learn across boundary, because it's at the juncture of boundaries where innovation occurs. And then we need also to reorient our curriculum so that it focuses on competence base and align with industry. So instead of a BSc in civil engineering, we should look at a BSc in infrastructure and systems so that students think interdisciplinary. So we must ensure truly artificial intelligence become a strategic enabler so that really it helps it helps to be integrated into the disciplines of the students. Students learn with AI, learn how to use AI, and learn beyond AI. So nowadays, no one is actually training students in tourism and hospitality. It's tourism and hospitality and artificial intelligence. This is accounting and artificial intelligence. So we need to make sure our education provides students, when they walk out of NUST, they should have an innovation. They should have a bankable proposal. They must have a direction of where to get to be employed. And then we need to look into things like hackathon and ideation that need to make sure that they translate entrepreneurship, and bring that learning into life. So these are things that we need to look at. But also education that allow students to learn outside the confinement of the classrooms. So nowadays we are talking about transferable skills, hard and soft, not only soft skills. So we have also to make sure that our education is very bold. It must stimulate potential industry that are relevant to the modern societies. Things that are talking to chemicals, electronics, beverages and food, construction technologies. This is where the future is moving. It's electronics. So now that we know the students, so how can then we transit to the institution? NUST, to be globally competitive, it must be future focused and responsive to whatsoever is happening in higher education landscape. So at the core, the university need to be aware that actually innovation can only occur when applied research and creativity is applied to real life challenges. So, but how can truly this happen? We need research we need a strategy that enhances our research to be actually to enhance global citizenship, truly aligning to the global future, and it should be collaborative, and it must not actually be limited to Namibia, it must be beyond. And it should lead to patents and product development. Now here, I'm just giving an impression of some of the strengths that NUST has, because we need to appreciate that. There are quite a lot of good things that are coming there. But a strategy must be very bold, our new strategy, to really give a spark on new industry. Look, everyone is talking about drones, ballistic missile. This is electronics and chemical. We are too much importing. We need to diversify our economy. We need to focus in manufacturing. We need to strengthen our higher tech industry. And we have to be intentional. So our research culture should definitely be applied with directed industry impact so that it can actually elevate our research and the institution blend, ranking, and identity. So this impression I'm also giving is to say NUST has done quite a lot. You can see the ranking and everything. It's a good foundation. But we need to invest. 10% of our university budget should be invested into research so that we can actually really advance the capability that we want. Higher tech lab. So a lab in analytic and innovation so that we can give an impression around business and related fields. So research chair in construction or manufacturing and skills development, institutes, and then technology station. So we also need to make sure that strong industries are created. As we continue, NUST has mooted actually to expand campuses. These must be enhanced to become a fully-fledged and technology-oriented center of excellence, integrating research, innovation, and the like. The purpose is to take education to the people. So, but we know that funding currently is going to salary and utilities. So these are some of the issues that we would like you to back upon: public-private partnership, strategic alliance, and education trust funds, so that we can make sure that we focus on research, on funding. So leadership is not compromised. NUST stand at a defining moment, one that demands bold, principled, and decisive leadership. With the right direction, this can actually be a source of innovation and then inclusivity and advanced technology. I am prepared to be that leader, to bring that transformations, so that at least we can create impact. However, I cannot do it alone. I need people. So I will provide visionary and transformational leadership, coupled with strong corporate leadership, corporate governance, and also be able to navigate social and political dynamics. So we need actually to respond to change. Our integrated strategic business plan need to be placed. So organization will have new leadership. So we must be able to employ change management. So we need to achieve the results. So a robust performance management system should be in place. We need to comply. Our annual and audit reports and financial statement need to be in place. NUST need to be digital savvy. So digital technology need to become a strategic enabler. So people should be at the center. So we must focus on staff development. So to conclude, Chair, NUST does not need just a university manager. It needs a builder, a catalyst, and a leader who will turn this institution into a launchpad for generations of problem solvers, job creators, and global citizens. I'm that leader. We are not constrained by the environment, we are shaped by it. NUST will no longer wait for the future. Why can't we do it together? I'm ready. Let us begin. I thank you.
I want to say that the presenters were given 1 hour to prepare this. They've not seen it before. They've 1 hour. They had 1 hour to prepare this. So, I want to be discriminatory a little bit. Our minister has to go to the cabinet, to the parliament. I'm sure you will not feel bad if we give him the mic to us the first floor, so that he must go and make a good, a good law for NUST there.
Okay, thank you. Prof, all the very best. Just a quick appreciation to yourself and the previous candidate for both emphasizing the mandatory entrepreneurial education. I think that's something equally I'm quite excited about. I want to ask you the very same question, and that is, when we reconvene in 5 years, what hard evidence would prove that your tenure has transformed NUST? That's my very straightforward question.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Minister. Let me recognize you. I only came to see you later while I was in the middle of the presentation. My sincere apology. Okay. Let me answer your question as follows. And I truly appreciate that this question is very thought-provoking. Look, currently NUST is a city campus. Let's agree to that, the strength of NUST. But if we have to make NUST a university of all Namibians, we truly have to take education to the people. So one of the key issues that I appreciate is to see NUST moving to the regions, so that it can actually create an impact. So that is one tangible or measurable impact that I can assure you in 5 years' time, you will see it. 2, NUST, by its mandate, it's a technological university, meaning it must revolutionize the industry of this country. We need to see industrial parks, agro-technology parks, we need to see technology stations. These are things that really sparks innovations, because you can't do innovations in a classroom. It has to be in a lab that is provided with strong equipment and higher caliber staff members that should really drive that. So this is something that I can assure you that you will definitely feel it and see it at NUST, that there will be this type of infrastructures that will be there. And there will be also technology coming out. There is nothing that's going to stop us actually from doing so. So thank you very much, Honorable Minister.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. For now, Prof, if you don't mind, we will have 5 questions, and you answer them, and if there's time, we'll go again. I want to ask, is there a question online? If you can read 2 online, and then we come here.
Okay, so online questions, they are quite lengthy, but I will read them as they are. It says, thank you for the brief presentation. You mentioned that students should graduate with the ability to embrace innovation. How do you plan to enhance this outcome, given that many students appear to lack sufficient practical experience? And then additionally, with the growing use of AI tools in learning, how will you ensure that students still develop the hands-on skills necessary to effectively demonstrate their competencies in the industry? And then this, I guess, are 2 questions. And then the third question, as we work towards goal 4 of NUST, the admissions department is eager to fully transition to a paperless student record-keeping system. To successfully scale this, especially regarding IT capacity during peak registration seasons, what strategic frameworks or investments would you champion to support frontline departments in achieving this digital transformation?
Thank you. Can we get 3 from here then? Then the professor will answer. You want to ask the same questions? Yeah. Okay. Yes. Where are the mics? Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor, for the wonderful presentation. My question, I'm also coming from student services. The university has student support services, but we are struggling with fragmentation and late intervention. And you know, they say that student success depends on proactive and integrated support systems. How will you elevate student support systems to a strategic priority at executive level, ensuring that faculties, academic staff, support divisions work collaboratively to identify and support at-risk students?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Prof. Yes. Thank you for the presentation. I just want to ask, in terms of the subsidized tertiary education, how will you ensure institutional sustainability? Thank you.
Chairperson, can I proceed? Thank you. Thanks, Professor, for the presentation once again. Looking at your presentation slides and the emphasis on innovation, I would like to ask your strategic investment streams within the technology transfer space. Where will you channel it towards? Which one of the IP assets would you prioritize, and how will you invest in that? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm not so sure whether I got them well, because everyone was almost rushing through the question. But then there was the first one to say, how can we make sure that innovation truly take place? I just wanted to summarize it in short. That was the very first question. You see, the best learning come from industry, the latest learning. The industry is the best laboratory. So innovation will never take place if we don't forge strategic partnership with industry. We will not be able to. So issues, new trends, and new opportunities that should shape us must come from industry. So that's why the moment we forge strategic partnership with industry, we'll be able to learn latest developments. And that's why that's how I will make sure that truly innovation comes out. We need to attach our students to the industry. We need to bring industry to the university. Let me give a scenario. There is an intention to create a campus in Otavi. It's a very brilliant idea. But what we have seen as a new trend is that universities are now creating or establishing factories to really produce. So industry comes to the university because there's labor, cheap labors, and there is an opportunity. That is one. So like say for instance, you focus on food productions and processing. So when you are producing a yogurt, you're not using strawberry, you're using something that is more towards a health yogurt. Then you compete with bigger industry. Then that's type of innovation that you would want to come out really for the student to focus on. So there was also another question to say, AI tool, do you think it is actually creating disruptions? And instead of students to have hands-on practical, I see it actually the other way around. Simulations are coming in handy. I would like to give a practical example. With our School of Medicine, we are struggling to get, dead bodies, We are really struggling. But we cannot stop training the students. So what we are doing, we are focusing on simulations, completely providing a clear and practical environment for a student to see what they were supposed to see on a real body. So we should not actually fear AI. We must actually harness it. We must receive it. We must appreciate it so that it can actually provide the support. You see, the record system, this is something that we are all scrabbling with because I think of massification, but I think we have to have a solution to it. One of the biggest things we need to do as a university, we need to invest more into technology. And then we need also to invest more in training. And that is where we are not actually doing anything. We just employ people, and then we deploy them, and we think they are capable. So people who are actually, receiving our customers, they tend to create specific impressions that damage the institution reputations. So harnessing technology and also training, our staff members. Those are the two key elements that will bring professionalism and also efficiency. It's because technology, it is actually solving most of the challenges. Because say, for instance, if a student sends a query, and after 2 days, if somebody does not respond, then it must actually, report to the supervisor. Immediately, this is something that, it cannot happen in a normal space. I think that is basically how I can approach it. There was also another question talking about fragmentations on the support systems and work collaboratively. I think I would really respond to it in the same manner. I see the two problems converging in one direction. To say, for us to remove fragmentations, there is now new ways actually of addressing these things through technology. You need to invest more and more into technology. In fact, the institution, the budget on advancing capacity, technology capacity, has really to increase because this is what the future is all about. there was a discussion that actually was very thought-provoking to say, in 10 years' time, we might not actually have students physically at universities, but you need to support them. You need to provide them with everything that they need, as if they are in the university. So, but how do you do it if you don't prepare yourself today? So I think this is basically, and I'm responding to these two questions as if they are within the same space. The question from subsidized education, what was the question again? I'm sorry, I only managed to capture. If you can repeat it for me.
Will be strategy to ensure institutional sustainability at the long run?
Thank you. I like the question because, I will give you a scenario and then probably then I'll provide some solutions. You know, as a university last year we were very worried whether we will be able to meet the target, because that to us is sustainability. So we were promised 1.9 billion, but only once we have actually make a cut of 31,000 students. So we were very worried. So then it's within my mandate as a leader to say, I need to devise a strategy. So what I did, I then had to convene a small team and we had to put up a plan. We have to visit each and every AS school in Namibia within a very short record period of time. But this is not sustainable. I think the question is to say, what measures and systems should we put in place to allow institutions actually to have students and have the same subsidy? That is what you're asking. So one way actually of dealing, okay. Just amplify your question again.
It's supposed to be on, yes. I'm just asking, in terms of sustainability, not only in terms of recruiting students or having students on campus, financially, technologically, whatever we need, how will you assist the university?
The institution?
Yes, yes.
Hello, I'm sorry, you link it to the students, I mean to the subsidy, then that's why I was moving in that direction. So there are many ways actually of dealing with this. In my strategy, if you have seen it very well, NUST have a very limited number of beds, let me put it that way. And this is not good for the students. Students are commuting or they are renting somewhere and they are being exploited. Now, as an institution, we need to be very robust enough and be able to raise funds to do this. So it has worked. Public-private partnership is a key thing. You get a providers, he put up, you know, this infrastructure. In 15 years' time, it's NUST properties. And then you have it. You will be able to make money and sustain yourself going forward. There are collaborations. In fact, let me focus on what is key to NUST. That is higher tech in laboratories. These ones should all be actually established or developed by establishing strategic alliance with industry. You know, truly, this is workable. Suppose we model one of our campus towards medical technology, and we want to develop diagnostic kits. So we should really work with NIP to bring their part, and we bring our part. They have many labs, and they are struggling, and they are buying this thing from outside. So this is one way of thinking. So we also need to look into really, especially research. We need to have a robust research grants unit. And things must happen. We should not just, it must happen. And it has worked. So that then research are completely funded but not only from outside, but also from inside, so that we do not only follow what our international partner would want us to research on, but we should also direct our own internal. We must be locally relevant. I think that is what I'm trying to say. Those are a few things I can respond to. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's grab at the end. May I give this opportunity to panel members, if you also want to ask questions? Yes, Professor Ndolovu, any other panel member who wish to ask? Okay. Prof.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thanks, Prof. Gideon, regarding your presentation. You may have answered the question, but I just want to maybe ask it in a different form. Your response to the minister's question basically is a very bold, very bold vision, taking into account the sparseness of Namibia. However, I wanted you to give us a sense of how you would canvass financial support and technical support that would help you to be able to achieve that, taking into account that we do know the extent to which government resources, subsidy is very limited as such. Thanks.
Thank you very much, sir. I foresee government going to force institutions, especially tertiary institutions or higher education institutions, to move into a corporate space. I foresee that coming, and it is almost happening. Now, look, there is one way actually of really generating our own resources that we could channel to things that are not yet covered by government subsidy. So more and more universities are moving into a commercial space, creating commercial arms. And then these commercial arms are now becoming ventures. So if you want a lab, sorry for argument's sake, we want to create an innovations, and then we know that Bokomo has brought an idea to us, and this has to be in Otavi. So it will become a business entity with shares between Bokomo and that commercial arm of the institutions, and we have to create that lab, with the funding from industry, and of course it can now be sustained through, because it's run like a business. I think that is really the direction that we needed to follow as a university. Secondary, as I said, electronics, chemicals, this is where the global, industry is moving. We truly need to strengthen our technology stations and bring in companies, especially global companies, so that they really play their part. They want to come. So you can even think of Delta Electronics. So, and then you set up a technology station. But the first thing is that you first need to attract the best skills. You can't just do it, and then you need to have something to show. Because it's good to say something, and it's another thing when you don't have it and people will run away. So first, there must be people on the ground who should truly be able to bring something up and say, here it is. So that when the partners are being brought together by our commercial arm, then they can be able to focus on that type of innovations and be able to produce, the products. And then at the same time, develop these higher technology laboratory or technology stations that we are talking about. I think that is how one can approach it.
Thank you. How many minutes do we have? 7 more minutes. Maybe we can accommodate 3 questions. Yes, there is 1, 2 here. The student asked, let's go there. You didn't ask, eh? Yeah. Let's make 4. Fast. Also the student. Okay, let's start there.
Thank you, Chairperson.
This is their last round.
All right. Professor, thank you for the presentation. You have outlined an ambitious vision around students, innovation, public-private partnerships. Given that academics are the engine of these outcomes that you intend to achieve, what specific measures, financial, professional development, or institutional, will you put in place to ensure that they are empowered as co-catalysts in achieving this vision that you are sharing with us today?
Thank you, Prof. Gideon, for your presentation. I see you are still writing. I'll allow you to finish. Can I? All right. Thank you very much. From a commercial or commerce point of view, I'm quite interested and fascinated in understanding how will you bring about cross-disciplinary balance or ecosystem between the STEM and non-STEM faculties. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Gideon, for a very interesting presentation. I'm not really sure if I'm allowed to ask my boss a question. As you may know, and you may agree with me that many public institutions in Namibia currently prioritize what I call a traditional procurement and tendering model over deep-rooted industrial academic partnerships. Now, I just wanted to find out, should you become a VC for NUST, how do you intend to advocate for a policy shift that incentivize the government to move toward an industry academic funding model?
Prof? Okay. Good afternoon. Prof, you spoke about innovation, and as we speak, NUST students are facing academic pressure through issues like assessments being written on weekends, Sundays to be specific, due to capacity constraints. So if you were the Vice-Chancellor right now already, how would you ensure that your innovation-centered leadership improves the student experience rather than adding to the pressure that they are already facing?
So students must not face pressure, that's what he's saying.
No, that's not what I said.
No, I got your question. No, thank you very much. I'm going to be very brief. Look, staff or, people in any organizations are so critical. And of course, staff welfare need to be strengthened by all means. One will focus, naturally we do not really only focus on monetary rewarding. We need to focus on what develop a staff so that then that comes with monetary rewarding. I don't know whether you understand what I'm trying to say. So when you have many of your staff members and they are just bachelor's holders or master's holders, you need to send them out for staff development. And then eventually they get their PhD, they get promoted and they become professors, and eventually they become financially viable. I think that is one thing. So we will focus more on staff development, focus more on sending out people for sabbatical leave, and create really serious opportunity to ensure that staff have international exposure so that they can grow. I'm putting it in a rhetoric way because I don't want to diverge many other things. A salary of a professor is almost like a director salary. So this is how I will approach it. Instead of saying I'll give you more money, I'd rather empower you so that then you eventually assist the institution, assist me as a Vice-Chancellor to grow research, to grow innovation, but at the same time, you are also rewarded. That's how I will approach it. So in short, I'm not so sure whether the balancing of STEM and non-STEM is in terms of the number of programs or is it in terms of integration? Okay, it's very simple. What we need to do, currently we are no more reviewing the curriculum. That concept is gone. We need to transform the curriculum. So what you need to do, you need to go to the industry, you must understand the industry need, you come back and transform. Put everything that you have away. Then you need to understand that in 10 years' time, accounting will be actually performed, by technology. Then that impression will already help you to shift from a normal accounting type of a thing to accounting that is actually supported by technology. I think that is one thing of looking at it. You spoke, it's just because of time. There is actually a very nice trend that is globally, forcing countries to move more and more into establishing education trust funds. This is something that's going to disrupt actually the funding of tertiary institutions. So it will allow government, agencies, industries to come together and then they pump money to fund these higher tech infrastructures and many things that we are talking about. That will definitely be one of the priority that I'll push. So if you look into most of the Western African, Central African countries, they are already way ahead with this type of things. Assessment, so that capacity. Look, I want to put this in a scenario. When COVID was there, because everyone was actually afraid of dying, and no one wanted to go to campus, so people had a commitment to ensure that everything is done online. But immediately when everything normalized, we truly just move back to normal. So students will have more problems if we are fitting 24,000 students into an infrastructure of that magnitude. We truly need to bring in technology to support students, especially with your assessments and even teaching and resources. Everything must be put actually, on a platform where a student must be able to access it. And then one other issue that I have not probably spoken about, we also need to be very deliberate and move into new things. There is micro-credential that is coming. Instead of forcing students actually to do things at once, why can't we allow them to stack one by one until they get qualifications at their own pace? I think this can also help to decongest the situation that you just alluded to. Thank you.
That was the last round, colleagues. Thank you very much. Huh? Yeah, you can clap now. Professor, thank you very much for that. We wish we have more time, but we, the panel members, we have to go back and finish what we started. Well, thank you very much. You are released. I'm sure it has been not easy. Now you can feel comfortable. And for the rest, thank you for being here. For those online, thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us. This session ends here. Thank you.